When the finals began, I think it's fair to say that the anticipation by the fans wasn't exactly the highest, especially after Game 1. Fair or not, most people thought the matchup was pretty lopsided, and that the Lakers would handily take care of Miami in 4 or 5 games. But when both Goran Dragic and Bam Adebayo suffered injuries in Game 1, that only sank lower. However, as this Miami team has done all season long, they came out and battled harder than anyone thought possible of the group, and they pushed the Lakers harder than any opponent that the Lakers faced in this postseason. Backs against the wall, counted out, the Heat put up a valiant effort, but ultimately the Los Angeles Lakers were just too much and are your 2020 NBA champions, which brings us to the topic of today's video. With the finals and the season as a whole coming to a close, we'll be reflecting on a few lessons that we learned from this entertaining series, specifically focusing on some of the key players and what their performances have done for their legacies and the way they deserve to be viewed moving forward. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. This entire season as a whole will go down in history as one of the strangest the league has ever seen all the way until the very end, and hopefully we'll never have to deal with anything this extreme ever again. After a 6-month layoff in the middle of the season, the league did the absolute best they could to salvage the rest of the year, and after originally being heavily scrutinized for the idea of a bubble, they executed it to perfection. Not a single player tested positive in the bubble, games continued on schedule with zero interruptions, and the play on the court was as exciting as ever. Obviously, without fans in the stadium, it was a bit strange to watch and get used to for the viewers at home, and obviously the players playing too, but I have to admit that they did a great job making the most of everything and making it feel as much like a real game atmosphere as they possibly could. It obviously wasn't perfect, and having fans in the building will always be the best, but with that out of the question, this was the next best option. There will be people arguing against the validity of the playoff run because without it actually taking part in a playoff atmosphere, the pressure that the players usually feel just wasn't there, but at the end of the day, basketball is basketball, and the best basketball team in the 2020 NBA season did come out on top. Nothing about the Lakers' win was a fluke, they didn't have any special advantages over the rest of the league, and every team had to deal with the same things, so no excuses are acceptable here. Now, to get into the main portion of the video, we learned quite a bit from this NBA Finals series that, say, a year ago, may not have been the popular belief amongst the fans. Keep in mind, a year ago, neither of these two teams were even in the playoffs. But after strong yet underrated off seasons for both of them, they battled their way to the final dance and went at each other for 6 games. To start things off, after missing the playoffs last season, LeBron James especially caught more flack than he ever had since his infamous 2011 Finals series. After leaving Cleveland for LA and immediately coming up short in year 1, questions about whether age was catching up to him were more prevalent than ever. Going into his age 35 season, which was also his 17th year in the NBA, a lot of people around the league not only believed he might be washed, but the reasoning to move to LA was questioned as well. Did he only go there to make movies and shift his focus onto the next part of his career after basketball? Did he settle down just for the sake of his family? Was basketball even a priority for him anymore at this point in his career? Well, a year later, after these questions were asked by fans all around the country, we definitively have answers. LeBron went to LA because he believed he had a terrific chance to win a championship there, and that's exactly what he did. He added number 4 to his resume along with another Finals MVP, and the discussion revolving him as the greatest player of all time against Michael Jordan is only going to get bolstered. Sticking with the Lakers, the next player that had a lot settled about himself this finals this year was Anthony Davis, who over the last 2 seasons was in the middle of a bit of controversy of his own. Playing his first 7 seasons on the Pelicans, last season he seemingly gave up on the team and tried to force a trade at the deadline. He would have to wait until the offseason for that trade to the Lakers to come, and even after it happened, there were questions about whether he was worth the price. The Lakers gave up a very hefty package of players and assets, including all-star Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and some picks. But whether Anthony Davis was worth that was a debated topic. He failed to lead the Pelicans to the playoffs in 5 of the 7 seasons he played there, so in LA, he had to prove he was the elite running mate LeBron needed to win a ring, and as we now know, he was worth every bit of what the Lakers gave up to acquire him. He performed as well as anyone possibly could have expected him in this playoff run. He helped elevate the team to new heights, and he even had a case to be made for him to win Finals MVP as well. Now moving on to a Heat player, Jimmy Butler was another highly controversial figure a year ago, and after the season he just had in Miami, I don't think he could have possibly done any better to silence the haters and dispel any negative notions about his commitment to winning. He was called a locker room issue, they said you can't compete at the highest level with him leading the way, they said he wasn't worth the trouble that he came with, and now everyone that was saying those things is silent. All Jimmy ever wanted was to be in a team that fights as hard as they can every game and always gives it their all, and this Heat team was as resilient as they come. Jimmy was rightfully concerned about the surroundings in each of his last 3 teams that he played for, and now he's finally found his home. Throughout the entire rotation they had shooters, they had hard-working defenders, and they had smart playmakers, and together they made a deep run that nobody could have anticipated. Jimmy's triple-doubles while scoring 40 points and 35 points in their 2 wins in the finals series put him in elite company, and moving forward, the Heat will be a force to be reckoned with him leading the way. Now, not only did the big names in this finals series help themselves in a major way, but there's one last player I wanted to discuss who may not be a star anymore, but he's been written off as an actual contributor for years, being Rajon Rondo. I don't think any former star player had more of a negative reputation coming into this postseason than Rondo did, who was seen as a huge negative by any close observer of the Lakers, and even fans of the team often grew frustrated with him. He too has garnered a reputation of being tough to coach and difficult in the locker room, but I never really bought that because Rondo is genuinely one of the smartest players in the entire NBA when it comes to basketball IQ, and come playoff time, he always shows up. Playoff Rondo is a completely different animal, and this entire postseason, he was legitimately the 3rd best player on the Lakers, which speaks to the kind of player he still is. I'll admit, I'd be lying if I didn't think he might have lost a step after watching his regular season play the last few years, but once the playoffs started, I wasn't the least bit surprised he turned things up a notch, because that's who Rondo is. In his prime on the Celtics, he was the engine that made those great Boston teams run, and now that he's older, he's still playing the role of the X Factor on championship teams. Overall, this season concluded on a high note with a lot of questions from the year before getting answered. We now have an exciting offseason to look forward to, and I'll be sure to keep you all updated on everything happening from this point forward. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think this championship proved for the 2 teams involved. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.